Today, we're looking back at the most feared fighters we've ever covered, all in one ultimate video, starting off with Tom Aspinall. And trust me, it only gets worse. The heavyweight speed sheet. Heavyweight fighters are usually slow, methodical, and built for power over speed, but every once in a while, someone breaks the rules. I mean, if I say Mike Tyson, you already know explosive speed, insane reflexes, and knockout power in both hands. If I mention Muhammad Ali, it's the footwork, the movement, the way he floated around the ring like he wasn't even touching the canvas. Aspinall, a 250-pound monster who moves like a butterfly and stings like an RPG headed straight for your jaw. The light footwork, the fast hands, the long reach, it's the worst kind of cheat code, because heavyweights aren't supposed to move like this, and yet here we are. Let me take you back to UFC Fight Night 191. Tom Aspinall versus Sergey Spivak. Spivak, with 15 wins, 7 knockouts, 4 losses, standing at 6'3" and weighing 251 pounds. A well-rounded grappler, known for his ability to drag fights into deep waters. A massive test for Big Tom. A classic striker versus grappler matchup on paper, where Spivak aimed to neutralize the speed advantage. But little did he know the striker he planned to out-grapple was actually the better grappler. Aspinall came out bouncing, feinting, and cutting angles like he was 2 weight classes smaller. Within seconds, Spivak looked like he was playing a reaction game on expert difficulty. And then, boom, a lightning-fast elbow straight through the guard, followed by a flurry so fast Spivak's brain was still buffering when the ref stepped in. But if you think, okay, maybe if you can survive the first wave, you can slow him down. Well, let's just say the next topic is going to make you rethink that strategy. The high IQ. To be honest, when I saw the two fighters standing across from each other, I thought this might be a tough one for Aspinall. Collier looked sharp, big frame, composed, ready to bang. Turns out, it was nothing like I imagined. Let me take you back to UFC Fight Night 171. Tom Aspinall versus Jake Collier. It was Tom's UFC debut, and you'd expect nerves, maybe a slow start. But instead, you got a masterclass in composure. Collier came out trying to establish control, throwing rangefinders, looking to get into rhythm. But Aspinall didn't bite. He just watched, waited, analyzing everything. And then, snap. One perfectly timed right knee straight to the stomach. Collier didn't even blink before his body gave out. Tom followed it up with a quick 1-2, and Collier was counting sheep. Now, here's the part casuals miss. Aspinall didn't rush. He didn't storm forward and swing wild. He paused, calculated, and when he stepped in, every follow-up was clean, sharp, and clinical. The whole thing, 45 seconds. It looked like a fight, but it felt like a hit job. Aspinall walked in, ran the program, and shut the system down. Unshakable chin. By 2015, Nate Diaz was in a weird place in his career. He had already fought for titles, already beaten names like Donald Cerrone and Jim Miller, but he wasn't being treated like a star. The UFC had him tucked away on Fox cards, while Conor McGregor was exploding into superstardom. And if you know Nate, you know that didn't sit right with him. Let me take you back to UFC on Fox 17. Nate Diaz versus Michael Johnson. Johnson wasn't a nobody. He had 16 wins, lightning-fast hands, and the kind of athleticism that made him a real problem in the lightweight division. For the UFC, this was supposed to be a test. If Nate could get through Johnson, maybe he'd earn some shine again. Round 1, Nate comes out sharp. His boxing had reached another level at this point. Crisp, accurate jabs that snapped Johnson's head back again and again. Johnson landed some big shots too, but this is where Nate's chin came in. The man just walked through everything, smiling, talking, taunting. By the end of the fight, Johnson looked exhausted and confused. Nate looked like he'd just finished sparring in Stockton. The decision was clear. Diaz had outboxed and outclassed him. And that's when the real show started. Joe Rogan came into the cage for the post-fight interview and handed Mr. Nate the mic. Bad idea. Nate grabs it and unleashes one of the most legendary call-outs in UFC history.
Yeah, Conor McGregor, you're taking everything I want.
Rogan quickly realizes he's just given Diaz live TV freedom. Tries to pull the mic back, but it's too late. The statement was already made, and that moment changed everything. In one night, Nate went from another Diaz brother to the man who called his shot against Conor Whiskey McGregor. And got it. But first, Jorge Masvidal. Stockton shuts down the king. By 2016, Conor McGregor was untouchable. The Irish superstar had just destroyed Jose Aldo in 13 seconds. He was the new face of the UFC, and Dana White was already building him into a global brand. The man could say anything, fight anyone, and the world would tune in. But when his original opponent, Rafael dos Anjos, pulled out injured, the UFC made a call that would change everything. Nate Diaz. Now here's the thing. Nate wasn't supposed to win. He was stepping in on short notice. No full camp, no perfect preparation. The UFC expected him to show up, give Conor some rounds, and then collect his paycheck. But if you know Stockton, you know that was never going to happen. Let me take you back to UFC 196. Nate Diaz versus Conor McGregor. Conor entered with 19 wins, 17 knockouts, and the aura of a man who had never been broken. Nate came in with his usual Stockton swagger, and the fight world saw it as David versus Goliath. Round 1, Conor came out firing like a sniper. His left hand was on point, landing clean again and again. Nate's face started to swell, blood dripping early, and it looked like the script was being written just as the UFC wanted. But then came round 2, and this is where the Stockton zombie woke up. Conor unloaded everything, combinations, power shots, and Nate just kept walking forward, smiling, talking, and throwing back. The more Conor landed, the sharper Nate got. The more Conor landed, the more Nate walked forward, because pain is progress. Then it happened. Nate cracked him with a 1-2 that wobbled McGregor. The crowd erupted. Suddenly, the king was vulnerable. Conor panicked, shot for a takedown, his first mistake. Nate sprawled, reversed, and slid into mount like it was a jiu-jitsu seminar. Within seconds, the choke was locked. Conor McGregor tapped. The UFC's golden boy submitted. The world went silent, then exploded. Stockton had shocked the fight game, and just like that, one of the most legendary images in UFC history was born. But when you humiliate the giant, you know he's coming back for revenge. So let's roll into the next topic, and trust me, it's going to blow your mind. War of the Century. For us, this was it. The rematch everyone had been waiting for. Conor McGregor versus Nate Diaz 2. After what happened in their first fight, absolutely anything could happen here. My brothers came over to watch, and the tension was unreal. Let me take you back to UFC 202. Nate Diaz versus Conor McGregor, Part 2. Conor came in with 19 wins, 17 knockouts, and just 3 losses. The reigning featherweight champion, the UFC's golden boy, and a man who didn't need any further introduction. Round 1, Conor started aggressive, hunting for an opening right away. He found it fast, ripping a hard shot to the body, cracking Nate with a heavy overhand, chopping at the leg, and then slipping a punch and tagging him clean on the chin. The crowd went wild. Not as wild as my brother, who nearly tore the house apart cheering for McGregor. From there, Conor kept targeting Nate's right leg, smashing it with brutal kicks. You can see the swelling start almost immediately. It was smart, calculated, and painful to watch. Nate went Diaz mode. Problem was, Conor went sniper mode. He tried to pour on the pressure again, even threw in a Stockton slap, but Conor answered back with another clean punch right to the face. By this point, Nate was getting pieced up. Conor's precision was on another level, dominating exchanges, sharpest striking of his career. But then came the shift. Nate dragged him into deep water. He pinned McGregor against the fence, and suddenly, the Irishman's gas tank started to fade. Conor looked tired, almost desperate, circling away as Nate poured it on. Seconds later, Conor was literally running from Nate, but there was no escape. The zombie was hunting him down. In the final seconds, Nate unleashed bombs, and it felt like a Ricky Balboa scene. Blood, chaos, and pure heart until the bell rang. Between rounds, Conor's corner resorted to premium ice packs just to keep him alive. Round 5, both men battered, bloodied, and refusing to quit. It was pure war. In the closing moments, Nate scored a slick takedown and gave every ounce he had left. Finally, horn sounded. They stood, embraced, and walked away like two warriors who had just gone through hell together. It ended 48-47, 47-47, 48-47 for McGregor. A paper-thin victory in what will forever be remembered as one of the UFC's greatest wars. The southpaw surprise. The thing about Islam that people forget is that he can shut down your game just as easily as he can wrestle you into existential despair. His foundation is grappling, but his striking ends fights on its own. Not with volume, but intent. Southpaws are notoriously awkward, and Islam uses that to his advantage. For context, 9 in 10 fighters are right-handed, so that's what gyms are built around. But when you face a southpaw, the rhythm changes and jabs line up differently. Like your muscle memory is drunk and keeps reaching for something that's not there. Your power side is now facing theirs, and there's more risk in exchanges. Angles change, especially for kicks and straight punches. It's like playing on an Xbox controller at your friend's house when you've played PlayStation your whole life. Frustrating. Opponents drain countless hours to sprawl and transition, expecting grappling, and then, bam, head kick. Let me take you back to UFC 294. Islam Makhachev versus Alexander Volkanovski 2. Volk, standing at 5'6" of compact chaos, weighing 155 pounds, had 26 wins, 13 finishes, and 2 losses. The reigning featherweight champion and the pound-for-pound #1 fighter in the world. A man who pushed Islam to the edge in their first encounter with his pressure, pace, and cardio. He stepped in on 11 days' notice and still looked confident, until Islam saw an opening and shut his lights out. During round 1, a seasoned veteran like Volk thinks this was just a feel-out phase. He's still reading the range, and maybe setting up a feint. Meanwhile, Islam's bouncing around composed, and then detonation. A clean left high kick cut through Volk's guard and made him collapse harder than McGregor's career. Volk's legs gave out, his focus disconnects, and after 2 precision follow-ups by Makhachev, it was all over. Just like that. No wrestling, no takedown, no transitions. Just one of those highlight reels that will be replayed for years. He's not just a grappler anymore. He's a southpaw sniper now. And if you think, well, just watch out for that head kick. Good luck seeing it coming when the grappling threat is always in the back of your mind. The control freak. Let me take you back to UFC 267. Islam Makhachev versus Dan Hooker. Hooker, with 21 wins, 10 finishes, 10 losses, standing at 6 feet tall and weighing 155 pounds. He was a durable striker, a fan-favorite competitor with great knees and sharp hands. Solid takedown defense too. He'd gone to distance with Dustin Poirier and Paul Felder, but he had no idea what kind of challenge he had just stepped into. I had some friends over the night Islam faced Dan Hooker. I remember telling them, Hooker's tough, man. He survived Poirier. He might give Islam problems. I thought he'd use his reach to keep Islam honest. You know, maybe stuff a few takedowns, keep it scrappy. Islam shut my theory down quickly. 30 seconds in, we were all dead silent. Not because anything dramatic had happened, but because Islam was already climbing him like a jungle gym, and Dan couldn't do a thing about it. He moved in, secured the body lock, brought Dan Hooker down like it was routine maintenance. No setup, no struggle, just control, pass, and isolate. And once he trapped the arm, Hooker wasn't defending. The guy was stuck, and not the weird internet kind of stuck. Makhachev cranked the Kimura like he was closing a car door, and that was it. A first-round submission win, and the bout was done in under 3 minutes. Dan Hooker, a UFC veteran who'd been in multiple 5-round showdowns, didn't land a single significant strike on Khabib's protege. Oh well, thankfully we still had wings and beer left. And if you think maybe if they survive the grappling, Islam doesn't stall when he's on top. He ends fights quicker than Leo breaks up with girls once they turn 25. The first-round killer, Max Holloway, the man who went 5 rounds with Dustin Poirier, 3 wars with Volkanovski, and ate 700+ strikes without blinking. A granite chin, a cardio machine, a legend. And yet, when he stepped in with Ilia Topuria, none of that mattered. Let me take you back to UFC 308. Ilia Topuria versus Max Holloway. Holloway, 26 wins, 14 finishes, 7 losses, standing at 5'11", weighing 145 pounds, with more octagon time than almost anyone in UFC history. Known for his volume, his durability, and his ability to break opponents mentally and physically. But Ilia didn't flinch. From the first bell, Ilia showed no respect for the legend in front of him. He didn't overextend. He didn't chase. He just waited, watched, and placed every shot like he already knew where Max would move next. Holloway fired back with volume, but Ilia's footwork and composure neutralized it. He slipped just enough, landed just enough, and never let Max build momentum. Then came round 3. A slight feint, a shift in weight, and then, boom, a perfectly timed overhand right. Holloway collapsed. The crowd didn't even scream right away. They froze, because for the first time in his career, Max Holloway was out cold. And Ilia, he didn't scream, didn't flex. He just stood there, because this wasn't just another win. It was a message. And Ilia, he calmly sipped imaginary tea over Holloway's unconscious body, like it was just another day at the office. And that's how you erase an aura. That's how you become the new king. That's how Ilya became the legacy killer. One-shot knockout power. I remember the first time I saw Ilya fight. Something in me just knew this guy's different. He's going somewhere. There was no trash talk, no showboating, just this quiet intensity. You could see it in the way he moved, the way he reacted, like his mind was always 2 steps ahead. And I wasn't wrong, because the more I watched, the more I realized this wasn't just another hype train. This was a desert eagle trapped in a featherweight's body. Let me take you back to UFC Fight Night London. Ilia Topuria versus Jai Herbert. Herbert, 11 wins, 9 knockouts, 3 losses. Standing at 6'1" and weighing 155 pounds. Massive for the division, with serious reach and striking credentials. This fight made you realize that weight classes are here for a reason. Ilya was visibly massively undersized, a featherweight stepping into lightweight territory. But eventually that didn't matter. What people forget is that Ilya got clipped early. Herbert caught him with a clean head kick and had him stumbling. Most guys would have gone defensive, played it safe, tried to recover. Not Ilya. He's a totally different breed. He refused to give Jai a mental advantage, admitting mid-fight that the Englishman won a striking battle. Damaged and properly shaken, he continued walking up front and started chopping the body hard. Jai backed up, hands creeping lower, trying to create distance. And then it happened. One short step in, a level change, a tight right hook to the jaw. Ilya conceded a strong counter hook in exchange of his own, but muscle power, and most definitely a power of will, prevailed. Boom. Jai folded, looking like a statue of a warrior shattered to pieces. Eyes open, body frozen. Just off switch. No wild celebration. No need. Ilya knew what he did. He walked off like a man clocking out of work. So maybe you start thinking, alright, keep it on the ground, stay safe down there. But if that's your plan, you're walking straight into the next problem. The Matrix. Most people think Anderson Silva got the Spider nickname because of his style. Actually, it's just because he used to wear a Spider-Man shirt to his first bouts. The Spider nickname stuck because of his impressive ability to dodge them. Silva competed in 3 different weight classes: welterweight, middleweight, and light heavyweight. He was actually one of the first champions to move up, and when he did, he made elite 205ers like James Irvin and Forrest Griffin look silly. You gotta see it from Griffin's point of view. The man's bigger than Silva, so he's feeling himself during his walkout, thinking he's about to have an easy night. And then there's a glitch in the Matrix. He thought he was walking into a normal bout, but for him, it was more of a live VR experience on pay-per-view. You're going to miss strikes against Anderson Silva, that's a guarantee. But when he makes you look like an amateur, stands with his hands down and avoids your combos like he's Neo, it hurts your ego. Reminds me of when my girl asked me to change a tire and I had to tell her I didn't know how to. Not to mention, every time you miss against Silva, it's a booby trap. Because while you're punching air, he's countering with an absurd accuracy. Let me take you back to UFC 101, Anderson Silva versus Forrest Griffin. Griffin had 16 wins, 11 finishes, and 5 losses. The former light heavyweight champ was tough as a brick, bigger, stronger, and ready to drag Silva in the 205 mud. Fans loved Griffin's brawling style. Silva, the middleweight king, was on a 9-bout win streak. He probably moved up because he was bored, like my nephew when he asked for new toys to play with. Except Silva just beat up a man bigger than him for the lulz. From the start, it was obvious that this wasn't a fair matchup. Griffin tried to swarm Silva with volume, but Silva kept dodging him to the point it became humiliating. Casually leaning back to avoid Griffin's strikes by inches, the Spider looked unbothered, just like me when people share their unsolicited opinions. He just keeps his hands low and played with a former champion like a cat bored of its toy mouse. Silva showed off his evasiveness and countered like he was Neo in the Matrix. You can't hit him. Every time you miss, the danger meter increases. Silva was embarrassing this man. And then came the finish. As he moved backward, Silva hit him with a short jab that dropped Griffin like his controller disconnected. You know it's bad when Rogan starts laughing on commentary. Forrest literally ran out of the cage after. Run, Forrest, run! So yeah, it's hard to touch Silva. But if you do, now you have to weather the storm when he actually gets serious. Counter-strike. No, we're not talking about the game. We're talking about Silva's wild counter-strikes inside the octagon. Even when you're on the offense, he's just waiting to shut your lights out with his perfect timing. People associate Silva with Muay Thai and BJJ, but he actually got his Taekwondo black belt at 18. He puts the mixed in martial arts. His style mixes multiple disciplines like capoeira and boxing. He got into MMA as a way to provide for his family, but his real passion was always boxing. That's one of the reasons why he kept boxing after his UFC run. Now, let me take you back to UFC 126, Anderson Silva versus Vitor Belfort. Belfort had 19 wins, 13 finishes, and 8 losses. A confident powerhouse and former champion with the fastest hands in the division. He brought chaos to his opponent's doorstep. Fun fact, Silva had said before that one of his dream opponents was Vitor Belfort, since they were fellow Brazilian legends and all. But when they met inside the cage, well, it kinda sucked, to be honest with you. Until it didn't. The bout started off slow. Fans were chanting Vitor Belfort's name and booing Silva because many felt the champ hadn't been putting on a show for them in his last few bouts. And as a wise man once said,
"The people pay pay-per-view for really fight."
And I'll be honest with you, I was one of them. During my introduction to MMA, I heard so much about Silva, but truth be told, I nearly fell asleep watching this live. And yes, I was still a casual, but I'm not exaggerating when I tell you, during the first 90 seconds, neither fighter attempted a strike. They stood in front of each other and cautiously walked around like they were playing musical chairs. And then, it took them nearly another minute to throw a second strike. Bro, when I tell you I was about to turn it off, I'm glad I didn't though, because I was about to witness one of the greatest moments in sports history. Belfort landed some leg kicks, and Silva was doing his signature hand feints. Then Belfort tagged him, and that's when the show really got started. The Spider landed a knee strike to the body and showed off his head movement for a bit. Belfort kept charging forward, but Silva had more composure. And then it happened. He blasted Vitor Belfort with a front kick right to the chin. And if you look close enough, you could see his soul leave his body. Just like that, the bout was over. The front kick heard around the world. One of the most famous counters in MMA history. It's not like Silva never used his legs though. Let me explain. The elbow surgeon. Some fighters jab, some kick. Tony, he slices. Let me take you back to UFC 229. Tony Ferguson versus Anthony Pettis. This was Tony's comeback fight after tearing his knee just 6 months earlier. Most fighters would have needed a warm-up bout. Tony chose Anthony Pettis, former lightweight champ. Just another victim. Round 1, Pettis lands clean. A big right hand. Tony stumbles. And then, the smile. Tony charges forward like nothing happened and traps him against the fence. From that moment on, the elbows start flying. Not big winding shots. Short, sharp, targeted. One to the eyebrow, cut. One to the cheek, deeper cut. Another behind the ear, chaos. Blood starts pouring. The cage floor turns red. And Tony, he thrives in it. He doesn't panic. He paints. He throws elbows mid-scramble while moving backwards, even while smiling. In just 2 rounds, he landed 80 significant strikes, many of them from angles no coach could ever teach. Pettis broke his hand trying to stop it. His corner waved it off between rounds, and Tony just stood there, arms out, shirtless, soaked in Pettis' blood like he had just left a crime scene photo shoot. The scariest part? He makes it look casual, like slicing a man open is just part of his evening routine. So yeah, elbows are bad, but at least you're conscious for them. But when Tony wraps up your neck, you might not even remember what happened. Enough about elbows, let's talk about Tony's favorite finish, the Darce choke. The Darce Collector. Kevin Lee looked like a beast. He walked into Fight Week shirtless, ripped, and cocky, claiming he'd smash Tony inside 2 rounds. The media loved it. Dana loved it. But Tony, he just stared through him, like he was already measuring his neck. What nobody knew was that Kevin was hiding something. A staph infection on his chest, right there for the cameras to see. And Tony, he smiled like a man who smelled blood in the water. Let me take you back to UFC 216. Tony Ferguson versus Kevin Lee. It was supposed to be a showcase for Lee. Instead, it turned into a slow, bloody unraveling. Kevin started strong, took Tony down, landed elbows, controlled the top, but Tony never panicked. He bled, he talked, he scrambled, and in round 2, the tide shifted. Tony's cardio kicked in, his pace ramped up, and Lee, he started fading. Then in round 3, Tony saw the opening, a small posture mistake. He climbed the legs, locked in the triangle, and cranked it tight. Lee tried to power out, but you could see it in his eyes. He was cooked. Tony Ferguson choked him out from the bottom to win the interim lightweight title, in the most Tony Ferguson way possible, in chaos, in blood, and on his terms. He didn't just win gold, he made a statement. You don't survive El Cucuy. You get dragged into the dark and left behind. But if you think that was unpredictable, Tony versus Eyeball. Donald Cowboy Cerrone has seen it all. Over 50 pro fights, been in wars, shared the cage with legends. But against Tony Ferguson, Even Cowboy looked confused. The weigh-in was already strange. Tony showed up with sunglasses, headphones, and taped up hands, as if he walked straight out of a dark basement gym. No stare down, no words, just that weird smile. Let me take you back to UFC 238, Tony Ferguson versus Donald Cerrone. Round 1 starts fast. Cowboy fires combos, keeps his distance. Then Tony begins his dance, switching stances mid-exchange, rolling under punches, throwing elbows off the break, and landing shots from impossible angles. One moment he's circling left, the next, flying knee. Donald tries to settle in, but Tony doesn't let him. At one point, Tony lands a clean combo, steps back, and then points at Cowboy like he's sparring in a garage. He throws a spinning back elbow while smiling. He yells mid-fight. He eats a punch and walks straight through it like a slasher villain. By round 2, the volume gets insane. Tony lands 104 total strikes in just over 9 minutes. Cerrone's face starts to swell, blood everywhere. Tony keeps talking, and then the weirdest ending of all. After the round, Cowboy blows his nose. His right eye completely swells shut. Doctors step in. Fight's over. It didn't end with a KO, but make no mistake, Tony broke him with pressure, chaos, and total unpredictability. Wait till you see what happens when he walks through Barboza's spinning wheel kicks like he's immune to pain. Machine Gun Max. If you had to compare Max Holloway to a weapon, he's not a sniper rifle. He's not a one-shot, one-kill kind of guy. He's a minigun, the kind that doesn't fire single bullets. It unloads a barrage until there's nothing left standing. The fight that we can link to this superpower is none other than Max versus Brian Ortega. A fight so one-sided, I'm pretty sure Ortega's corner was just Googling how to politely throw in the towel by round 3. Let me take you back to UFC 231. Max Holloway versus Brian Ortega. Ortega, with 15 wins, 7 finishes, 3 losses, standing at 173 centimeters and weighing 66 kilos. A jiu-jitsu specialist known for his dangerous submissions and a chin that could take a beating, which, as it turns out, was the worst possible thing to bring into a fight with Holloway. I've seen beatdowns before, but this one felt different. From the opening bell, Holloway wasn't just throwing punches, he was uploading them in bulk. 5, 10, 15 at a time. Ortega would cover up, block a few, maybe land 1 or 2 in return, but it didn't matter. Holloway just kept firing, like he grabbed the max ammo in Black Ops Zombies back when life was simple, and your only worry was keeping that damn crawler alive. By round 3, this wasn't a fight anymore. It was a live demo of why Holloway is the best volume striker in the sport. And this was the craziest part. He was not only landing punches, he was teaching Ortega how to avoid them while hitting him at the same time. Talking, laughing, literally coaching him through his own beating. Imagine getting pieced up while your opponent is casually explaining what you're doing wrong. That's next level humiliation. By round 4, Ortega's face looked like he tried to headbutt a lawnmower. And at that point, even I was hoping someone would step in and stop it. The doctors had seen enough. They saved him from a 5th round that would have been less of a fight and more of a live-action crime scene. But if you think that's the worst way to lose to Holloway, just wait until you see what happens when he starts talking mid-fight, and there's nothing you can do to stop him. The zombie mode. I remember watching this fight live, and at some point I stopped reacting to the punches. Not because they weren't brutal, they were, but because Holloway just wouldn't go down. Gaethje was throwing sledgehammers, and Max, he just kept coming. Let me take you back to UFC 300. Max Holloway versus Justin Gaethje. Gaethje, with 25 wins, 20 knockouts, 5 losses, standing at 180 centimeters and weighing 70 kilos. A wrecking ball with nuclear power in his hands, and the chin made of whatever they used to build tanks. This fight wasn't just hype, it was guaranteed chaos. 2 guys built for war, locked in a cage, with no intention of taking a step back. From the start, Gaethje landed bombs. The kind that makes corners start practicing their towel-throwing form. You probably already know the guys I'm talking about. Tony Ferguson, Dustin Poirier, Rafael Fiziev. But Holloway, he just smiled. Not the nice shot smile. The oh you're screwed smile. By round 3, something terrifying happened. Gaethje was the one getting broken. He landed everything he had, and Holloway was still in his face, throwing more, laughing, and somehow looking fresher than when the fight started. And then came round 5. With just seconds left, Holloway pointed to the ground right there. No movement, just war. Gaethje hesitated, and that's when you knew the zombie mode had taken over. Gaethje threw everything at Holloway that night, and Holloway just kept walking forward. Max is a different breed, but trust me, the guy in the next video, he rewrote the rules of fighting. The Venomous Guard. Before the belts and bonuses, Charles was fighting in half-empty arenas in Brazil. Low pay, no crowd noise, and barely enough money for a decent haircut. Though, let's be honest, even today, that fade's questionable. But what did he have? A guard that felt like quicksand. I remember watching the Kevin Lee bout with my brothers, sitting on the couch, eating microwave pizza that tasted like cardboard and shame. We were arguing, betting push-ups on whether Kevin Lee would wrestle him to death or get caught in something stupid. Turns out, he managed to do both. Let me take you back to UFC Fight Night 170. Charles Oliveira versus Kevin Lee. Lee, 18 wins, 11 finishes, 6 losses. A former interim title contender with NCAA Division II wrestling and powerful boxing. Charles, he was riding a 6-fight finish streak and growing hungrier with every bout. Round 1 was fast. Lee looked sharp, landed combos, stuffed some kicks, even cracked Charles with a clean shot that had the crowd buzzing. Well, the imaginary crowd. Thanks, pandemic. The whole pandemic phase felt like a school play gone wrong. Anyway, mask off, we're done pretending. Charles stayed calm and nasty. He threw knees, front kicks, elbows in the clinch, and baited Lee into closing the distance. In round 2, Lee shot for a takedown and got it. That's when the trap snapped shut. Charles immediately framed, grabbed wrists, and started shifting his hips like a guy laying tripwires. Up kicks flew, elbows sliced. Lee tried to posture up and instantly had to defend an armbar. By round 3, Lee looked frustrated. He shot again, but this time Charles sprawled, snatched the neck, rolled under, and boom, guillotine locked. No space, no escape. Lee tapped, and then forgot he tapped, tried to keep fighting. The ref had to step in. That's how disorienting Oliveira's guard was. If you're still here, like. If you want more, subscribe. Charles is just getting started, but what's even scarier? He'll break you when you're ahead. The momentum thief. This is one of those topics I've been dying to cover, because if Charles Oliveira is good at anything, it's stealing momentum, and not just in the cage, in life. See, most fans know Charles as the guy who wins with submissions and chaos, but what they don't realize is that this man built his entire legacy off of reversing momentum. From birth, he was born in a favela in Guarujá, Brazil. No money, no support. Just asthma and mud-soaked flip-flops. Doctors literally told his parents he wouldn't live past 10. Now imagine telling that same kid, you'll one day choke out Dustin Poirier on pay-per-view while Joe Rogan screams in your face and Dana White hands you $1 million belt. Sounds like a Netflix series directed by someone high on microwave pizza and Nina Drama's Instagram reels. But that's Charles. Rock bottom was just his starting point. And by the time he reached UFC 269, he wasn't just defending his title. He was doing what he always does, walking into a fight that everyone thought he'd lose, and flipping the script. Let me take you back to UFC 269. Charles Oliveira versus Dustin Poirier. Poirier, 28 wins, 21 finishes, 7 losses. The people's champ. Elite hands, granite chin, endless cardio, a black belt in jiu-jitsu, and a resume full of killers. Holloway, KG, Hooker, McGregor, twice. He was supposed to drown Charles. Everyone said it. And round 1, it looked like they were right. Charles got tagged hard, twice. He got dropped. The crowd was losing its mind. Even Joe Rogan was halfway out of his seat. But here's the thing. Charles doesn't panic. He hit the ground, adjusted his shorts, and literally started working the angles, while Poirier blew his gas tank trying to finish him. Round 2, tables turned. Charles clinched up, dropped savage elbows, and made Dustin Poirier look like a dude trying to breathe in a phone booth. You could see it. Momentum shifting. Poirier was still throwing, but now he was second guessing. Round 3, checkmate. Charles backpacked him like a student loan. Hooks in, chin under. And Dustin, the same guy who willed himself through 5 rounds with Holloway, tapped. No scream, no celebration. Charles just stood up calm, like Nina Drama sneaking out of your hotel room while texting her next victim. And when you're panicking, that's when he pulls out the one weapon that no one wants to see. The cardio nightmare. Before he ragdolled people, Usman wanted to be an NBA star growing up, but his height made him pivot to wrestling. Regardless of the sport, he always knew he'd be an athlete. He trained like one since he was a kid, hence his impressive cardio. Usman maintains a high pace without fading or coasting. His pace ramps up. By round 4, your lungs are pleading harder than all 8 of Diddy's lawyers. Let me take you back to UFC 235. Kamaru Usman versus Tyron Woodley. Woodley was 5'9" and weighed 170 pounds. He had 19 wins, 11 finishes, and 3 losses. The welterweight champion had one-punch power and explosive wrestling. After 4 title defenses, welterweights looked at him like the guy who someone in your friend group keeps inviting, and you just pray he goes away. He finished Lawler in a minute, shut down Wonderboy twice, and dismantled Till. Woodley was on a 7-bout win streak. Of course, I'll never look at him the same way after he was knocked out by Jake Paul. He sold his legacy for money, but that's a topic for another day. Usman was facing a fortress, so he brought dynamite. He maintained high output for 25 minutes without slowing down. Woodley had excellent conditioning, but he was exhausted by the 3rd round. Usman mixed clinch control and strikes. Throughout the bout, there were 0 breaks. He weaponized his conditioning, landed 336 strikes, 6 takedowns, and had 10 minutes of control time. All 3 judges scored it 50-44, the most dominant 5-round performance of any UFC title fight. He won the belt, but that was just getting started. It'd be hard to take it off him, given he had a mean chin. Sure, eventually Leon Edwards cracked the code with that head kick, but if you were watching UFC during his title reign, you know Usman had a mean chin. I mean, it's in his DNA. His brother, Muhammad, is also in the UFC. He won the Ultimate Fighter. He tragically lost his 2-year-old son in 2019, and that gave him a reason to push through every struggle. Kamaru's daughter already has jiu-jitsu trophies. During the first years of his life, Usman didn't have running water. Sometimes he didn't have shoes. Now his teammates joke that he showers more than anyone and won't even wear the same gym shoes outside. He keeps things cleaner than a Dagestani's record. People with that background are built different because pain is progress. Let me take you back to UFC 268. Kamaru Usman versus Colby Covington 2. Colby was 5'11" and weighed 170 pounds. He had 16 wins, 8 finishes, and 2 losses. He was America's most hated cardio machine, with trash talk that made Uncle Chell proud. This was revenge. The last time he fought Usman, he lost for the first time since 2015. It was close until his jaw was cracked like a fortune cookie. But Colby was a nightmare, a relentless athlete with NCAA Division I wrestling, absurd pace and volume. Imagine being punched 400 times by a guy who refuses to breathe. That's Colby. But when you fight prime Usman, that wasn't enough. Even his mic game was improving. Early Usman interviews felt like he was reading a Wikipedia page.
Which? No. Tottenham Hotspur's best one.
But by the time he told Colby he broke his face, he was ready to cut wrestling promos.
Fake stompage, fake breath, fake fall. Wait till I see you next time. Wait till I see you next.
On fight night, Usman dropped Colby twice in the 2nd round. But Colby stormed back and landed clean shots in the 3rd and 4th. Colby wobbled him late with a combo that reset Usman. Yet Usman held his ground and somehow outlanded Colby. Even while getting cracked, he didn't shoot for safety. He stayed in the pocket and traded. And if you think he just takes strikes without returning them, think again. The gas tank. It was around 2021 that I realized Merab was special. I saw him climb through the ranks and thought, this guy's a future champion. But there was one small problem. The person who was holding the belt was Aljamain Sterling, his teammate and close friend. Sterling became champ that year, and every bantamweight was gunning for his throne. Well, everyone except Merab, because he respects the bro code. Merab kept racking up wins, 8 in a row to be exact. He broke takedown records and shut down legends. But instead of challenging him for the gold, he was basically Aljamain Sterling's gatekeeper. And no, Uncle Dana was not happy about this at all. And even though we all love BFF MMA stories like Hamzat and Darren Till, Merab had to make a statement. So in 2023, that's exactly what he did. Let me take you back to UFC Fight Night 221. Merab Dvalishvili versus Peter Yan. Peter Yan was a former UFC bantamweight champion, standing at 5'7" and weighing 135 pounds. He had 16 wins, 8 career finishes, and 4 losses. No Mercy had defeated veterans like Jose Aldo and Corey Sandhagen. Yan had razor-sharp boxing and elite takedown defense. The guy trained with bears in Siberia. No, really, dude's like an ice-cold Russian Terminator. Merab wasn't too bothered with all that, though. Both of them were known for their pressure. But this was like an endurance test where only one guy brought an oxygen tank. I remember watching it live and thinking, alright, he's coming in hot, but surely he'll slow down by the 2nd round. 15 minutes later, Merab was still chain wrestling, as if someone bought him a Tesla for every takedown he landed. That's when I realized how incredible this guy's cardio was. He doesn't stop shooting for the legs, ever. He had 49 takedown attempts. You could tell Peter Yan was just annoyed, bro. Merab turned his lungs into mashed potatoes. Some guys are dangerous when they land clean, others when they get top control. But Merab just keeps sprinting after you with his endless gas tank. Every round is a high-speed chase, like you've got a 5-star wanted level on GTA. Peter Yan was on defense for 15 minutes. Just like when she asks you, "Who's Kayla?" after going through your phone. The rhythm. You know that lag you get in online games where your inputs don't work right? That's what striking against Merab feels like. Your combos are out of sync and your rhythm is broken. Merab fights like he's got a 0-ping connection and you're stuck on hotel Wi-Fi. He completely breaks opponents' rhythms. If your plan is to feel out the rhythm, good luck, buddy. Let me take you back to UFC 278. Merab Dvalishvili versus Jose Aldo. Aldo, standing at 5'7" and weighing 135 pounds, was still a legitimate problem. With 31 wins, 18 finishes, 7 losses, and a 90% takedown defense rate, he was coming off a 3-fight win streak over Font, Munoz, and Chito Vera, a former UFC champion with 9 title defenses. The King of Rio is one of the sharpest strikers ever, not to mention his elite takedown defense. A Muay Thai sniper with nuclear leg kicks, clean combinations, and head movements smoother than Connor's whiskey. But Merab didn't care about any of that. In round 1, he just kept moving. He wasn't even landing big shots. During round 2, he was just feinting and level changing, like a 5-year-old whose sugar intake was off the charts. Round 3 could be summed up by clinch entries, foot feints, and fake shots. Aldo was confused, annoyed, and outclassed. Probably felt nostalgic for his WEC days too. Merab denied him the space, rhythm, and chance to throw the combos Aldo spent 2 decades perfecting. Aldo couldn't find a clean shot the entire bout. They laughed at his style until this fight. It started with a meme. Clips of Plessis throwing haymakers with his chin in the air, his legs stiff and no rhythm whatsoever. He looked like a 2004 backyard brawler who just discovered Monster Energy. The internet lit him up. Reddit said he moved like he was fighting off a bee swarm. Twitter joked he was Mortal Kombat on beginner mode. But here's the thing, he kept winning, and that only made people angrier. Let me take you back to UFC 264, Plessis versus Trevin Giles. It was the prelims of a McGregor card, which meant millions were watching. Giles was everything Plessis supposedly wasn't. Calm, technical, polished, a sharp striker with good footwork and clean defense. Everyone expected Dreykus to get exposed on the big stage, and to be fair, the first round didn't help. He came out looking like a glitchy NPC, throwing wild punches off balance, while Giles controlled the space like he was sparring his drunk cousin at a family barbecue. Even the commentators sounded like they were prepping for a polite post-mortem. Well, it was a fun ride for Plessis. And then, in round 2, it happened. A right hand out of nowhere. Giles froze, then collapsed, face down, lights out, just like that. The crowd went silent. The people who were laughing suddenly had nothing to say, because this wasn't clean technique. It wasn't crisp or textbook. It was something more dangerous. It was unpredictable, and that makes it nearly impossible to prepare for. Up next, the war you probably missed. His debut looked like the UFC accidentally grabbed the wrong guy from the locker room. Hair messed up, feet twitching, stance like he watched one highlight reel and said, "I got this." Nobody knew who Dreykus Plessis was. Not the fans, not the commentators, maybe not even Bruce Buffer, but still something felt off. Not in a bad way, in a dangerous way. Let me take you back to UFC Fight Island 5, Plessis versus Marcus Perez. Perez was a weird puzzle. Flashy, unorthodox, and the type of guy who shows up to weigh-ins dressed like the Joker. No one expected a clean performance here, and Plessis, he delivered exactly that. Not clean. His stance looked like he learned it from a YouTube ad that starts with, "Bro, you don't need a coach." The opening seconds were pure chaos. Dreykus overextended, threw wild overhands, slipped on the canvas. You'd think he was shadowboxing in Crocs, but then out of nowhere, he uncorked a short right hand that erased Marcus Perez from existence. The KO was clean, but it was everything around it that made you stop and think. He was breathing through his mouth after 30 seconds. His footwork looked like a guy trying to dance and fight at the same time. And yet, the punch landed. Not just any punch. It was placed, timed, decisive. That's when the first red flag went up. The good kind. The kind that says, wait, is this guy better than he looks? You see, Duplessis doesn't fight pretty. He doesn't fight like someone who trained in the same gym for 10 years with a traditional coach yelling, keep your hands up. He fights like a man who's been in real chaos and came out knowing what actually works when rules fall apart. The leg kicks, unless it snaps. Sorry, we had to make the joke. It was right there. Love you, Silva. All jokes aside though, the Spider's leg kicks were a huge part of his game. Silva dismantled his opponent's legs piece by piece, and once their movement was gone, so was any chance they had left. Like most Brazilians, Silva loved football growing up, and still does. Maybe all the football games he played as a kid helped him develop strong legs. Who knows? What we do know is that unlike Pele or Kaká, Silva used his leg strength to kick humans instead of footballs. And if you want a prime example of this, let me take you back to UFC 134. Anderson Silva versus Yushin Okami. Okami had 27 wins, 10 finishes, and 5 losses. Okami was a stoic grappler with discipline. But there was a backstory here. Back in 2006, before Silva hit his stride in the UFC, he fought Okami. Silva was dominating until Okami shot for a takedown and Silva blasted him with an illegal upkick while Okami was still grounded. Okami couldn't continue, so Silva lost by DQ. Obviously, it wasn't a real loss, but it stung. Okami was the last man to technically beat him. So this was Silva's revenge arc. Fast forward to 2011, Silva was deep into his title reign, cleaning out the middleweight division on a ridiculous win streak. But Okami was having a solid run too, and became the #1 contender. Here's where things got spicy though. Okami told the media he had Silva's number because of that DQ win. Obviously, the champ took that personally. He called Okami disrespectful for acting like he actually beat him, and vowed to settle the score. Oh, by the way, UFC 134 was held in Rio. Yep, the first Brazil UFC event in 13 years. The crowd was electric, and there was a special atmosphere. It was a homecoming for the Spider. National pride mixed with a personal grudge. Okami came in with his usual game plan. He tried to have a methodical, grappling-heavy match, but Silva was in superhuman mode, bruh. Hands down, smiling and dodging punches like he was Michael Jackson. In the first round, Silva toyed with him, reading everything he did. Okami looked tentative, realizing this wasn't the same Silva he faced in 2006. Silva methodically chopped him down with sharp leg kicks and body shots. He kept him guessing, managing range and setting traps to counterstrike. In the second round, Silva ramped it up. He taunted him, but landed jabs and uppercuts. He dropped Okami twice, and after the second time, he finished him. He broke Okami's base with the leg kicks, slowed him down, and finished him like clockwork. Beautiful strategy. But sometimes, Silva was just awkward, in a good way. Let me explain. Awkward angles. Silva always said his idols were Bruce Lee and Muhammad Ali. You could feel that in his swagger. The hands-down style, head movement, and charisma. He's obsessed with Bruce Lee movies, collects action figures, and is a huge comic book fan that loves Spider-Man. In other words, my guy's a nerd. But what happens when a nerd fights another nerd? One who loves anime so much he was nicknamed after one. Except in this case, both nerds are world-class combat warriors who can dismantle you with ease. Oh, and speaking of nerds, if you're an MMA nerd like me, subscribe for more breakdowns like this. Now, let me take you back to UFC 234. Israel Adesanya versus Anderson Silva. Adesanya was undefeated with 15 wins and 13 finishes. Izzy was a striking savant, fresh off melting Derek Brunson and had more hype than a Tarantino movie. At 43, no longer in his prime, Silva walked into the octagon against a younger, faster version of himself. On paper, it was goodbye, but in practice, it was a confusing, awkward stress test for the new middleweight king. Izzy was expecting a clean chess match. Instead, he got a weird geometry pop quiz. Silva's awkward angles and unpredictability were on full display that night. Because he was older, he relied heavily on his fight IQ and creativity. Silva was leaning, baiting, throwing lead elbows, front kicks, and jabs from funky positions. He'd tilt off center, raise a knee halfway, switch tempo mid-combo, and then fire something unexpected through a gap Adesanya forgot to close. The Spider made it awkward on purpose, and that slowed Adesanya down. It made him second-guess himself mid-bout. Despite being one of the most lethal strikers ever, Silva was always super respectful and openly emotional about martial arts. He cried after this, praised Izzy, and said, "Now you're the best." From Izzy's Bruce Lee pose to their emotional post-bout convo, this looked straight out of a movie. It was a passing of the torch. Alright, enough with all these feelings. Let's move on to some striking because that's what men do. Elbows for days. Have you ever seen Troy Ferguson elbow metal poles in training? The Spider wasn't doing all that in his training camps because, he's smart. But once he got to the octagon, especially on the ground, my guy was out there throwing elbows like his nickname was El Cucuy. Hold on, I'm talking, brother. Let me take you back to UFC 67. Anderson Silva versus Travis Lutter. Lutter had 9 wins, 7 finishes, and 3 losses. Lutter was a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt and winner of the Ultimate Fighter 4. They called him the Michael Jordan of Jiu-Jitsu, and he was focused on grounding the Spider. But this was one of the strangest title defenses in UFC history. Silva was fresh off wrecking Rich Franklin and was the newly crowned middleweight champion. Everyone was buzzing whether his flashy style could hold up, or if Franklin just got caught. Lutter had won TUF, which gave the winner a title shot at 185, a pure grappler who was supposed to test Silva's ground game, since the Spider was known mostly for his striking. But chaos hit before the fight even started. Lutter came in over the middleweight limit, missing the weight by 2 pounds. The main event was no longer for the title. It was a bad look for Lutter, and super anticlimactic for fans. But nonetheless, we still had action. During the first round, Lutter came out exactly as planned. He took Silva down and started working from top position. It looked dicey for the champ because Lutter was landing some heavy ground and pound elbows. Apparently, nobody told my man that the last thing you want to do is trade elbows on the ground against Anderson Silva. Silva's guard was tested hard, and for a second it looked like we could have seen an upset brewing. But the Spider adjusted in the second round. Even though Lutter got him down again, Silva stayed calm, locked in a triangle choke, and added his trademark elbows from the bottom. He let that boy know who the Elbow King was right then and there. The triangle was tight, and Lutter, exhausted from cutting weight and grappling, was stuck. He tried to hang on, but eventually tapped at 2 minutes and 11 seconds of round 2. The Spider showed the world his ground game was no joke. Lutter, meanwhile, was criticized for missing weight and blowing his big shot after a strong start. The champ's submission win made it clear. You couldn't just wrestle or grapple your way to victory. You had to be perfect everywhere. The aimbot. O'Malley's that chill kid in class that doesn't get into trouble, but knows he can shut your lights off in 1 second. That's the worst part about fighting him. Doesn't need volume. Just one good read to land one clean shot. He has a 61.5% significant striking accuracy. You can win most exchanges and still wake up on the canvas. His left hand has ruined more careers than USADA. Let me take you back to UFC 292. Sean O'Malley versus Aljamain Sterling. Aljo was 5'7" and weighed 135 pounds. He had 23 wins, 11 finishes, and 3 losses. He was on a 9-bout win streak, including 3 title defenses, the most in the division's history. A jiu-jitsu black belt with funky chain grappling style, wrestling pressure, body locks, and excellent back takes. Aljo had beaten Yan twice, Dillashaw and Cejudo. Like him or not, the man was chasing GOAT status. This was O'Malley's first title shot. The press conference had energy. The champ looked tense, while O'Malley showed off his pink sunglasses. John had been sharpening his weapons for a year, waiting in the shadows like a Fortnite kid in bush mode. During the first round, Aljo pressured him, trying to close the distance and find the clinch. O'Malley stayed composed, feinting and reading the champ. It was all feel out. Then came the second. Aljo comes forward and overcommits. O'Malley steps back, counters with a perfect right hand, and after a few hammer shots, the game was over. What makes him so hard to beat is his God-given aimbot, calm under pressure. Sean doesn't get nervous. He fights the same way he streams Warzone. Cool, calm, and collected. Maybe the reason why he's so chill is his appreciation for plants and the don't panic, it's organic movement. He's like a colorful peacock who just enrolled in your jiu-jitsu class. Walks in like a diva, fights like a champ, and leaves like he's late to Coachella. But the scariest thing about him is he believes everything he says. And more often than not, he's right. For example, O'Malley told Petr Yan he'd be the best striker he's ever faced. And he outstruck him. Let me take you back to UFC 280. Sean O'Malley versus Petr Yan. Yan was 5'7" and weighed 135 pounds. He had 16 wins, 8 finishes, and 3 losses. He beat Aldo and Sandhagen with his boxing, relentless pressure, and takedowns. The former champion was the #1 bantamweight, the division's most dangerous athlete. With 52% striking accuracy and brutal pace, especially in the final rounds, Yan dragged opponents into the mud with no mercy. Get it? Because that's his nickname? Anyway, O'Malley was the underdog. He dived headfirst into Russian waters and everyone thought he would be humbled. But Sean proved he had something. composure. Even if you disagree with the scorecards, Suga remained calm under pressure. He ate punches, and Yan took him down more than once. Sean was pushed to the fence and forced to fight like never before, but never folded. He stayed composed, landed knees and counters, and won crucial moments in a close decision. People thought the solution was simple: let's wrestle. But Sean popped back up from takedowns and stuffed others with balance. And when Yan took him down, O'Malley had to deal with the annoying ground and pound that kept popping up like the DMs you purposefully haven't opened yet. Stop ignoring your friend's invites, John. O'Malley adjusted and fired back in big spots. It wasn't dominant, but he wouldn't fold, even against world-class competition. And all of this skepticism about his takedown defense was because people thought he only relied on his most dangerous weapon: chin check surprise. By 2022, everyone already knew Johnny Walker for his knees, elbows, and pure chaos. But there were still questions. What happens if the fight goes to the mat? Can he wrestle? Can he defend himself when things slow down? Against Ion Cutelaba, he got the perfect chance to show he was more than just a highlight machine. Let me take you back to UFC 279, Johnny Walker versus Ion Cutelaba. Cutelaba came in just like his nickname, the Hulk. Wild, aggressive, charging forward like he was trying to smash through a wall. Most people expected a brawl, but Johnny played it smart. He stayed calm, picked his shots, and even reversed Iwan's wrestling pressure. Suddenly, we were watching a different version of Walker, one who could actually control the grappling exchanges. The fight ended in a way nobody expected. Instead of a flying knee or a spinning elbow, Johnny took Cutelaba's back, locked in a rear naked choke, and squeezed until the Hulk tapped. That moment proved he wasn't just chaos on the feet. He had tools on the ground too. I mean, he even kissed him afterwards, like he finished up with his girlfriend after a good... And the funny part? Cutelaba was known for his insane stare downs and intimidation tactics before the fight, only to get choked out by a guy most people thought could only strike. That choke showed a new layer of Johnny Walker. But if you really want to understand his madness, you've got to see what happens when everything he does becomes unpredictable chaos from start to finish. Chaos Magnet. By the time Johnny Walker faced Paul Craig, I already knew one thing. When this guy steps into the cage, you're strapping in for war. And honestly, Paul Craig felt like the perfect dance partner for it. Known as Bear Jew, Craig had pulled off some of the wildest submissions I'd ever seen, catching opponents in the dying seconds when they thought they were safe. Striker versus grappler. But with Johnny Walker, I knew anything could happen. What made this fight so special to me wasn't even the action inside the cage, it was the atmosphere. UFC 283 in Rio de Janeiro. Johnny Walker finally fighting on home soil. I remember feeling the energy through the screen. The crowd was electric, waiting for something insane to happen. And of course, Johnny didn't disappoint. Let me take you back to UFC 283, Johnny Walker versus Paul Craig. The fight barely lasted 2 minutes. Craig reached for the leg to pull guard, trying to drag Johnny into his submission game. But Johnny stayed balanced, and the moment Craig exposed himself, Walker unleashed heavy shots. One clean punch on the ground stunned Craig, and just like that, it was over. Officially a TKO. Short, decisive, almost anticlimactic compared to Johnny's usual chaos. But the real madness came after. Walker went straight into his infamous celebration, the worm. Last time he tried it, he dislocated his shoulder. This time, it finally worked. The Brazilian crowd went crazy as Johnny slid across the canvas, soaking in the moment. That's Johnny Walker. Unpredictable, reckless, unforgettable. From injuring himself with the worm in Vegas to nailing it in Rio, fighting him is gambling with chaos. The walkout. Most fighters enter the cage with a mix of nerves, adrenaline, and maybe even a little fake confidence. Alex Pereira, he walks in like he's already seen the ending. The slow, methodical steps, the war drums echoing through the arena. That dead-eyed stare that doesn't just say, "I'm here to fight," it says, "I'm here to collect." And then the arrow fires. This isn't just a signature move, it's a ritual, a declaration that his opponent has been marked for destruction. But Jamal Hill, he thought he had the perfect counter. As Pereira let his imaginary arrow fly, Hill caught it, snapped it in half, and screamed like a little girl. In that moment, Hill didn't just break the arrow, he scheduled his own knockout. Let me take you back to UFC 300. Alex Pereira versus Jamal Hill. Hill with 12 wins, 7 knockouts, 2 losses, standing at 193 centimeters and weighing 93 kilos. A former champion, a heavy hitter, and a man who had no idea what he just signed up for. Before the fight even started, Hill had already lost. He thought snapping Pereira's arrow was some kind of psychological warfare, some alpha move to break his spirit. But what he really did was lock in his spot on Pereira's highlight reel. Then the fight started, and Hill made his second mistake, a low blow. Not just any low blow, a full power, field goal level groin kick that sent Pereira stumbling. The referee jumped in, ready to give Pereira time to recover. But Pereira didn't want it. No break, no hesitation, no complaints, just pure vengeance loading. 2 seconds later, boom, left hook. Hill's legs gave out like a cheap folding chair. Before he could even process what had just happened, hammer fists started raining down. The ref had seen enough. Fight over. The fight was short, but the lesson was clear. You don't break Pereira's arrow. You just make sure it hits you faster. The shin-splitting leg kicks. Every fighter has that one weapon that makes them different. When I mention Alex Pereira's calf kicks, you already know exactly what I'm talking about. Those quick, weird kicks that most fighters can't handle much of. This isn't just a kick, it's a factory reset for your lower body. Pereira doesn't just land calf kicks, he voids your warranty on walking. Fighters don't just slow down when he lands one. They start wondering if wheelchairs come with sponsorship deals. Let me take you back to UFC 295. Alex Pereira versus Jiří Procházka. Procházka, with 29 wins, 25 finishes, 3 losses, standing at 193 centimeters and weighing 93 kilos. A wild, unorthodox striker with endless cardio and a chin made of reinforced concrete. Against most fighters, Jiří's unpredictable movement makes him a nightmare. Against Pereira, it just meant more targets for his personal shin demolition project. From the opening bell, Pereira's game plan was brutally simple. Turn Jiří's legs into mashed potatoes. Every time Procházka stepped forward, Pereira greeted him with a calf kick. And the result was instant regret. Leg swelling, immediate. Footwork, deleted. Pain, unmeasurable. By round 2, Jiří's movement went from wild samurai to drunk uncle at a wedding that's trying to play guitar while standing on a table with one leg after 17 tequila shots. His balance was gone, his stance was breaking, and Pereira was now lining up the kill shot. Then came the moment Pereira had been waiting for. Boom, one left hook, a savage ground and pound sequence, and Jiří was flat on his back, blinking at the ceiling like he was waiting for divine intervention. Moral of this topic? When Alex Pereira starts chopping your legs, he's not just slowing you down. He's making sure that the only thing carrying you out of the cage is your corner.
The dead look. Before I go into further detail, you need to understand what I mean by Silva's dead look. Just have a look at this stare down. And the worst part, he doesn't blink. Seriously, you'd think the guy is in a staring contest with Satan himself. No blinking, no emotion, just pure, unfiltered violence waiting to happen. Let me take you back to Pride 17. Vanderlei Silva versus Kazushi Sakuraba. Sakuraba with 26 wins, 4 knockouts, standing at 183 centimeters and weighing 83 kilograms. This guy had already beaten multiple Gracies, but when he locked eyes with Vanderlei, different story. You could see it hit him. That moment of realization. The "oh fuck, where did I just sign up for" face. When the bell rang, Vanderlei pounced like a rabid dog let off the leash. Before Sakuraba even knew what was happening, he was eating hooks, knees, and enough aggression to make Conor McGregor forget about his whiskey and actually train for a fight again. Vanderlei didn't just attack. He smothered, overwhelmed, and erased any hope of survival. Sakuraba tried to clinch. Vanderlei turned it into a knee buffet. Tried to circle out. Vanderlei cut him off like an angry taxi driver. Every move Sakuraba made only delayed the inevitable. By the time the fight ended, Vanderlei's stare was the least of his problems. The damage was already done, physically, mentally, and possibly spiritually. He didn't just lose a fight, he got a front row ticket to Vanderlei's personal horror show. But if you thought his dead look was terrifying, just wait until you see what happens when he starts swinging bombs. That's when things go from scary to downright lethal. Swinging bombs. Have you ever been in a bar fight you didn't sign up for? No? Then congratulations! You've never fought Vanderlei Silva. Most fighters throw punches with some kind of plan, a setup, timing, maybe a little patience. Vanderlei, he doesn't throw punches. He launches them. There's no setup, no hesitation, just pure reckless destruction. If he swings to end the night early, and you better pray your chin is insured. Let me take you back to Pride 28. Vanderlei Silva versus Quinton Rampage Jackson. Rampage with 38 wins, 20 knockouts, standing at 185 centimeters and weighing 93 kilograms. A powerhouse, a man who could slam opponents unconscious and take ridiculous amounts of punishment. But against Vanderlei, he walked straight into a blender set to maximum violence, just like how you're walking into free content without hitting subscribe. Don't be that guy. From the opening bell, Vanderlei was throwing hooks like he was trying to punch Rampage's soul out of his body. No jab, no range finding, just full force bombs from every angle. And the worst part, they landed over and over again. Rampage did his best to survive, but Vanderlei's pressure was suffocating. Every time Rampage tried to create space, Vanderlei closed it instantly, swinging wildly, leaving zero breathing room, turning the fight into a brutal close-range brawl. And then came the finish. Vanderlei backed Rampage into the ropes and unloaded a storm of knees straight to the face. Jackson didn't just go down, he collapsed, head hanging through the ropes, lifeless like a discarded ragdoll. Vanderlei wasn't fighting to win rounds, he was fighting to erase people. Swinging bombs is one thing, but what happens when you can't even stand up anymore? In Pride, that didn't mean you were safe. It meant you're about to be stomped into next week. Head stomping. There's getting knocked down in a fight, and then there's getting knocked down in Pride. Because in Pride, hitting the ground didn't mean the punishment stopped. It meant things were about to get so much worse. Most fighters, when they see their opponent go down, they take a step back, reset, maybe look for a submission. Vanderlei Silva? He saw a grounded opponent as an opportunity to turn their head into a soccer ball. Let me take you back to Pride 33. Vanderlei Silva versus Yuki Kondo. Kondo with 55 wins, 24 knockouts, standing at 180 centimeters and weighing 83 kilograms. A veteran, a skilled striker, and definitely not the type to back down from a fight. But against Vanderlei, he might as well have been a crash test dummy. From the opening exchange, Vanderlei came in swinging. Kondo tried to trade shots, but within seconds, he made a terrible mistake and went down. And Vanderlei, he didn't hesitate. He rushed in and started stomping like he was trying to put out a fire with Kondo's skull. Each stomp came down with full force. No hesitation, no remorse. And the worst part, there was no escape. Every time Kondo tried to move, Vanderlei just adjusted, keeping him exactly where he wanted him, under his boots. It was fast, it was violent, and by the time the ref stopped it, Kondo was probably wondering if he had just fought a man or been in a car accident. And if you thought stomps were bad, just wait until you see what happens when Vanderlei locks you in the clinch. Because when that happens, your face is about to have a very personal meeting with his knees. The tie grip. If getting stomped into the ground wasn't bad enough, Vanderlei Silva had another trick up his sleeve, one that turned his opponents into human punching bags. And it all started with the tie grip. Most fighters use the clinch for control, maybe to slow things down. Vanderlei, he used it to trap you in the most violent spot possible. The moment he locked his hands behind your head, you weren't just in trouble. You were stuck in a never-ending nightmare of knees to the face. Let me take you back to Pride 21. Vanderlei Silva versus Guy Mezger. Mezger with 30 wins, 12 knockouts, standing at 183 centimeters and weighing 93 kilograms, he was a solid fighter. A technical striker with power and experience. He had fought some of the best in the world and wasn't afraid to trade shots. But against Vanderlei, technical striking meant nothing when you were getting pulled into a clinch from hell. From the opening bell, Mezger tried to keep things clean with sharp punches, good footwork, but then Vanderlei grabbed the back of his head. And from that moment on, Mezger had no say in how the fight was going to go. Vanderlei yanked him in and immediately started firing knees like a man possessed. One after the other, each landing with bone-crushing force. Mezger's legs buckled, his defense fell apart, and Vanderlei just kept him glued to his grip, smashing knees into his face like he was trying to break a piñata. It didn't take long. Mezger crumbled under his relentless assault, and Vanderlei walked off like he had just finished his day job. No hesitation, no mercy, just complete destruction. You might think getting trapped in Vanderlei's clinch is the worst possible scenario. But what if I told you there was something even scarier? Because next, we're talking about the one thing he doesn't have. No reverse gear. If most fighters have a fight or flight instinct, Vanderlei Silva never got the flight part. He doesn't step back, he doesn't reset, he only knows one direction. Straight at you, full speed, zero brakes. Some fighters take a cautious approach, measuring distance, picking their shots. Vanderlei, he fights like someone just told him there's $1 million prize for whoever swings first. The moment the bell rings, he's already moving forward, throwing bombs, cutting off angles, and dragging you into pure chaos. Let me take you back to Pride 10. Vanderlei Silva versus Daijiro Matsui. Matsui with 8 wins, 2 knockouts, standing at 173 centimeters and weighing 84 kilograms. He wasn't just some random guy thrown in there. He was known for his durability, a tough, scrappy fighter who could take a beating and keep coming. Unfortunately for him, that's exactly what happened. From the opening seconds, Vanderlei charged forward like a rabid bull, immediately unloading hooks, legs, and relentless pressure. Matsui tried circling away, using movement to escape, but Vanderlei didn't care. He got off the cage like a predator herding its prey. No hesitation, no pauses, just non-stop violence. Then came the moment Matsui made the worst decision possible. He covered up and tried to weather the storm. That was all the invitation Vanderlei needed. He unloaded with a flurry of hooks, kicks, and soccer kicks to the head that looked straight out of a street fight gone horribly wrong. Matsui tried to escape, but Vanderlei kept stepping forward, crowding him, suffocating him, making sure there was nowhere to run. And the most insane part? Vanderlei never slowed down. Not for a second. Even after the ref stepped in, he looked like he was still ready to keep going. The man simply does not stop. But if you think that was the peak of his aggression, you haven't seen anything yet. Because next, we're talking about Vanderlei at his absolute most terrifying. Axe Murderer Mode. This is it, the moment you've been waiting for. This isn't just another topic, this is the moment where Vanderlei Silva transforms into an unhinged, uncontrollable, frothing at the mouth animal. This isn't a strategy, this isn't technique. This is Vanderlei Silva turning into the most dangerous primate to ever exist. A silverback gorilla that just railed 15 lines and decided violence is the only solution. Because this is Axe Murderer Mode. Let me take you back to Pride 12, Vanderlei Silva versus Kazuyuki Fujita. Fujita with 11 wins, 5 knockouts, standing at 183 centimeters and weighing 108 kilograms. Fujita wasn't just tough. This man was built different. A heavyweight monster. He had already beaten top names in Pride and was known for his indestructible chin. Before stepping into the cage with Vanderlei, he had racked up wins against killers, eaten shots from some of the hardest hitters in MMA without even flinching, and most importantly, he had never been knocked out before. But none of that mattered when Vanderlei flipped the switch. The second the fight started, Vanderlei charged forward like a lunatic who had just been set loose. No feeling out process, no defense, just instant brain-scrambling war. Fujita tried to trade shots, but Vanderlei was throwing pure, unfiltered chaos. Hooks, uppercuts, knees, every part of his body became a weapon. And then it happened. Vanderlei smelled blood. His eyes locked in. His pace went from insane to psychotic. And suddenly, it wasn't even a fight anymore. It was a ritualistic sacrifice. Fujita's legendary chin didn't matter. Vanderlei pinned him against the ropes and unloaded a nuclear-level barrage of punches. Fujita was getting bounced around like a crash test dummy. His body wanted to go down, but Vanderlei refused to let gravity do its job. The only thing keeping him upright was Vanderlei's fist continuously resetting his position. The referee had to literally tackle Vanderlei off him, and even then, Silva looked pissed. Not because the fight was over, but because he wasn't done yet. Now check out this next video before Silva himself is right under your bed tonight.